You ever have one of those moments when you just say, enough is enough? When you've been shoved aside, disregarded, and made to feel invisible for too long, and then, suddenly, you're ready to take back your power? That very moment is what Christine Brown went through. She was the understanding wife in a polygamous marriage for years, quietly slipping into the background as her husband Cody diverted his attention elsewhere. But Christine didn't remain quiet. She fought back, walked away, and stood up, not for herself alone, but for the future of her daughter in a way no one anticipated. Today, we're diving deep into Christine's remarkable story, a journey from feeling invisible and overlooked to becoming a fierce, independent woman standing up for her rights and her child's well-being. We'll unpack the painful collapse of her marriage, the intense legal battles she faced, and how she's now creating a life on her own terms. If Christine's tale has already grabbed your attention, subscribe and leave a comment so we can talk about this epic change. Christine Brown's journey is nothing short of inspirational, particularly looking back at where she began. For years, she was merely one wife among many within Cody's polygamous clan, a role that left her feeling on the sidelines and invisible. Outside, she appeared to be just another piece in a hierarchical family system based on uneven love. But behind the scenes, Christine was waking up to a reality. She was so much more than one of the wives. She was Christine, a woman who had her own voice, her own needs, and her own dreams. Early on, Christine came into this household with optimism and a sense of duty to hold her own, being there for Cody and the other wives. But as time went on, that optimism wore off. With so many wives competing for notice in this household, Christine felt like an afterthought. And when Robin came along and became the fourth wife, it became a mathematic impossibility to share attention. Cody's attention went nearly all to Robin, and Christine was pushed further into the background of her own union. For years, she tolerated this bitter truth, playing the required role, prioritizing everybody else's needs above her own. Yet behind closed doors, the toll was staggering. As Cody put more effort into Robin, Christine grew lonely and emotionally forsaken. She was left to balance motherhood, family duty, and her own self with minimal assistance. What had initially appeared as a mutual faith in polygamy now came to seem more like a cage constricting her. But transformation was on the horizon. Christine slowly came to understand that she was worthy of more. The transition wasn't dramatic, but it intensified day by day. She began to see how profoundly the marriage was affecting her mental, emotional, and physical health. And then came the breaking point. Christine realized she wouldn't be another silent wife anymore. She gathered courage enough to tell the truth, to challenge the favoritism, and to demand to be heard. That moment was the turning point. Christine started making her own happiness a priority, taking care of her children, her sanity, and what was really important to her, no longer accepting a life that made her feel small. It wasn't an easy journey from silent acquiescence to self-empowerment, but it was the turning point that changed everything. What's so inspiring is how Christine's battle wasn't so much about Cody or the intricacies of polygamy. It was about her strength. She transitioned from being invisible to finding herself again. And with all that power, she entered a new phase where she wasn't merely a part of the family saga. She was writing her own narrative. Christine and Cody's relationship started on a foundation of love, religion, and mutual beliefs. But the introduction of Robin changed everything. Cody's overt favoritism of Robin was not only a personal rejection, it shook the framework of the entire family structure. Christine, already struggling to find her place, felt shoved to the brink. What follows is a turning point that altered Christine's life forever, and it's one that will keep you hooked to the screen, Watch on as we explore how she battled for justice, regained her strength, and forged a future from the mess. Have you ever become so invisible in a relationship that you begin to wonder if you're not as worthy as you thought? That's how Christine was feeling when Cody's attention increasingly turned to Robin, the latest wife in their polygamous household. At first, she assured herself it was just the way they did things. She had been a good wife for years, after all. But as Cody's attention fixated on Robin, Christine's anger simmered in the background. It wasn't the hours Cody spent with Robin. It was the emotional chasm growing between him and Christine that stung the most. Their strong connection that once was disintegrating, Christine was left with the agonizing reality. She was turning into a ghost in her own marriage, no longer noticed or appreciated. She had always been the peacemaker, the supportive wife attempting to keep the family afloat, but now she felt like an invisible presence in her own union, no longer visible or appreciated. Robin was not only the new wife, she became Cody's universe. Christine was relegated further into the background, shut out not only from her husband, but from the entire family situation. The neglect was deeper than missing out on attention. It was an emotional abandonment that made Christine feel isolated, not heard, and more frustrated by the day. Christine had been with Cody for years, keeping the family afloat through thick and thin. But as his relationship with Robin developed, he distanced himself and was not available to her and the other wives. Christine's pain would sometimes become unbearable, resulting in moments of heartbreak where she openly let her desire to be seen and appreciated. But Cody was deaf to her cries. This was not a small divide in their relationship. It was a widening chasm each and every day. Christine's own struggle was becoming more apparent as she began questioning all that she had ever thought regarding love, family, and the practice of polygamy. What had once been a working system to her now seemed unjust, almost cruel. She was no longer a mere good wife. She was a woman who required respect and love returned. One unforgettable moment stood out. Christine tried to communicate her pain directly to Cody, hoping he would listen. Instead, he dismissed her feelings, treating her vulnerability like an inconvenience. That was when Christine realized the emotional distance was too vast to bridge. Her frustration wasn't just about Robin anymore, it was about the whole marriage falling apart. Their connection, once founded on mutual love and respect, was now cold and claustrophobic. Cody's abandonment wasn't merely physical distance, it was a deep emotional abandonment. Christine, who had given so much of herself, felt like a stranger in her own life. The favoritism towards Robin was only half the issue. The deeper wound was Cody's disrespect for the partnership and emotional bond they had promised to share. As the marriage disintegrated, Christine came to appreciate her own value in a different way. The more Cody pulled away, the more it became apparent that the poisonous habits in their relationship were destroying her sense of well-being. Her anger evolved into a strong need to escape, not so much to restore the marriage, but to rescue herself. Christine's emotional path was tough and unprocessed. She wasn't only fighting Cody's abandonment, she was learning what it was like to be in a relationship that no longer helped her find herself and joy. This wasn't merely a crumbling marriage. It was Christine becoming aware of the reality that she deserved so much more. The animosity between them reached the breaking point at last, and the once contented family started to disintegrate. Efforts could not bridge the emotional gap widening between Christine and Cody. It was not a physical separation in terms of distance. It was an emotional one, and their marriage's inevitable demise was looming ahead. When Christine finally decided to divorce, her path to autonomy finally started. Breaking up the union was merely the beginning. She needed to establish a secure, stable life for herself, and more importantly, for her daughter Truly. Christine had spent years prioritizing everyone else for so long, But now her mission was plain: safeguard her child and create a life founded on integrity and security. One of Christine's greatest acts of courage was suing to establish paternity and seek child support. This wasn't merely about money, it was about standing up and claiming what was hers and her daughter's. It was a statement that Christine was no longer going to be marginalized or silenced. Deciding to sue wasn't easy for Christine. It was leaving behind a life of faith and tradition, where decisions at home were made for her by Cody and the polygamous hierarchy they existed in. For years, Christine's life had been defined by the roles thrust upon her as a wife, but now she was taking charge, not only for herself, but for Truly's sake. This had nothing to do with revenge or punishing Cody for hurting her. Rather, it was a battle to guarantee Truly's rights were respected and honored. Under the law, Cody had obligations as a father, no matter how poorly he faced his duties as a husband. Christine had to ensure he would uphold them, paying for support and emotional needs for their child. Asking for a paternity test may have appeared easy for others, but for Christine, it was a very important step. The nature of their polygamous household caused nagging questions to remain, and she wanted to be absolutely certain that Truly's relationship to her father was legally confirmed. This was about providing Truly the same rights and security any child should have: solid ground founded on love, encouragement, and legal certainty. It was frightening to deal with the legal system for Christine. She had known such a precise family configuration for so long that venturing into a courtroom was foreign ground. But she was unfamiliar with nothing. Christine attacked the challenge head on, using the law to fight for her daughter's future. The struggle was not for her own benefit. It was for Truly's health in a world where financial and legal security could be everything. Emotionally, this fight was exhausting. Christine wasn't battling for cash. She was battling for peace of mind. Having clear legal boundaries between herself and Cody entailed making deeply intimate family strife public. It was messy, painful, and raw, something she never wanted but couldn't avoid. But amidst all of it, Christine stayed strong, knowing this battle was for Truly's future. The severing of ties was the start of a new beginning, not only for Christine, but for her daughter. This courtroom struggle was a testament to Christine's strength and devotion to Truly. By fighting for her daughter's rights, Christine wasn't only taking back her autonomy, she was making sure Truly would have a secure, loving home, free of the shadows of their broken family. But the ripple effect of Christine's departure did not end there. The waves ran much further than their marriage, profoundly impacting Cody's relationships with his children. Cody had been the patriarch of a vast polygamous family for years, with wife and child alike dancing to play their role beneath his authority. Now that Christine was gone and Cody was more and more prioritizing Robin, the fault lines in those relationships became impossible to pretend did not exist. Christine's children, particularly Truly, experienced the pain of Cody's emotional neglect most sharply. Although Cody professed to love all his kids equally, the truth was otherwise. The more attached he became to Robin and her children, the more the other wives and their children were relegated to second-class status in the family. For Truly, this equated to finding herself caught in the middle of a father's withdrawal. The man who had been a steady presence in her life was now estranged, having left her drifting in uncertainty. Cody's efforts to bridge these broken relationships were superficial at best. It was obvious his heart wasn't completely invested. His emotional unavailability only served to widen the chasm. To Cody and the rest of the children, Cody's actions were a hurting betrayal. The father who had once been at the center of their lives was now uninvolved, self-centered, and incapable of giving them the emotional support they so desperately craved. The psychological toll of Cody's behavior was devastating, not only on his children, but on the whole family. The cohesion which polygamy was supposed to bring was totally disintegrated. What had been a common vision of an intact, close-knit family turned into a broken and emotionally distant one. Cody's disregard and outright favoritism didn't only hurt the women he interacted with, it destroyed the family's very picture of what polygamy was intended to be. What was intended to be a nurturing, loving community became an environment of conflict and suffering. As his relationship with his children disintegrated, so did his reputation. A one-time authoritative patriarch, Cody's judgment was no longer respected, not by the people outside, but by his own children, left to clean up the debris of their perfect family life. Following years of inner anguish, Christine's departure from Cody signaled a fresh beginning, one of rediscovery, liberty, and profound personal peace. Relocating to Utah was not merely a physical relocation, it was a rebirth on an emotional level. She wasn't merely leaving Cody behind, but rather a life that had been constructed under the stifling grip of polygamy. The adjustment was certainly challenging, yet it catalyzed a dramatic change. In Utah, Christine discovered something greater than a new home. She discovered space to breathe, heal, and reclaim the pieces of herself that had been silenced for so long. For the very first time, she set out to discover who she really was outside of being wife number 3. She was Christine, a woman with hopes, desires, and a destiny she could design in her own right. Perhaps the most significant transformation was that with David Woolley, a man who brought respect, love, and emotional nurturing that she'd been craving. In contrast to her marriage to Cody, where imbalance and neglect had been the problems, her relationship with David was founded on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Christine found with him not only affection, but companionship, a welcome respite from the loneliness she'd been living with for so long. As their love grew, Christine lost the shame and guilt that had huddled over her as a plural wife. Free from the burdensome expectations of polygamy, she rose high, retrieving her joy and rewriting the definition of what it means to be a woman in her own right. In standing up for Truly's rights, Christine wasn't only claiming her independence, she was establishing a foundation for her daughter's life, one not darkened by the vignette of her parents' failed marriage. That meant more than anything. But the repercussions of Christine's departure spread far wider than their marriage. Cody's relationships with his children suffered in agonizing ways. For years, he had been the hub of a sprawling polygamous household, where every wife and child had their place under his authority. But with Christine lost, and his attention increasingly on Robin, the fissures in those relationships became impossible to miss. The children on Christine's side, particularly Truly, suffered at the hands of Cody's emotional unavailability. Although he claimed to love all his kids equally, the situation was far different in reality. As he became increasingly enamored with Robin and her children, the others felt relegated to the sidelines, second-class citizens in their very own family. For Truly, it meant being caught in the crossfire. The man who should have been a constant presence drifted away, leaving her adrift in uncertainty. Cody's attempts to mend these broken relationships were half-hearted at best. It was painfully clear his heart wasn't fully in it. His emotional unavailability only deepened the divide. To his children, his conduct was a deep betrayal. The father who had once been the center of their world had become remote, self-absorbed, and unable to offer the emotional sustenance they so desperately required. Cody's former intimidating presence as the head of a polygamous household was now being challenged, not by outsiders, but by his own children, forced to make their way through the ruins of their one-time idealized family life. Finally, after all those years of inner conflict, Christine's choice to break free from Cody opened the door to a new life, one of discovery, liberty, and profound inner peace. Relocating to Utah, she entered new and unfamiliar ground, not only geographically, but psychologically. She was not only leaving Cody, she was leaving an entire life constructed under the oppressive limits of a polygamous marriage. Although the move was undoubtedly difficult, Christine's odyssey turned into one of deep transformation. In Utah, she discovered not merely a new physical setting, she discovered space to breathe, to heal, and to rediscover aspects of herself smothered for years. For the first time, she began to discover who she was beyond the realm of her marriage. She was no longer wife number 3. She was Christine, a woman with hopes, interests, and a future hers to shape. Perhaps the biggest change was her relationship with David Woolley, a man who provided emotional support, respect, and love she had longed for. In contrast to her marriage to Cody, which was characterized by imbalance and neglect, her relationship with David was based on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine partnership. With him, Christine discovered not only affection, but true companionship, a welcome respite from the loneliness she'd experienced, where her needs took a back seat to Cody's whims. The deeper their connection grew, Christine lost the shame and blame long attached to being a plural wife. Free from polygamous norms, she stood firm, regaining her joy and redefining what it means to be a woman independent of the rest. The emotional calm she experienced in David's embrace was the stability she had always yearned for, a relationship not formed on rivalry or abandonment, but on true affection and oneness. Christine's new Utah life represented freedom, the freedom to be who she was without apology. No longer bound by the past or burdened by toxicity, she reveled in the joy and peace of being in charge of her own story. She had finally emerged from the shadows and into a life where she could truly flourish. In so doing, she rediscovered herself, her value, her strength, and her happiness. It was a fresh start, everything that she had waited for. But Christine's journey was never about getting out of Cody. It was about making him take responsibility, particularly as a father to their daughter, Truly. Christine had kept things together for years with Cody off somewhere and emotionally unavailable. But when it came to Truly, Christine would not let his lack of responsibility go unchallenged. She insisted that he step up, to pay his bills, to be present in his emotions, to do the legal thing. This was not simply a court fight over child support. It was a struggle for Truly's welfare and emotional security. To Christine, this wasn't an act of revenge. It was a matter of course to allow her daughter the stability she should have. She knew healing would never be complete until both parents were actively participating in Truly's life. Christine's actions are part of a larger theme of empowerment, justice, and doing what's right. By insisting that Cody be held accountable, she not only fought for herself, but for Truly's future, and for anyone who's ever been dismissed or ignored. She stood up for her family's emotional well-being and her own right to stability and fairness. It was Christine taking back control, not with bitterness, but with clarity about what was in her daughter's and her best interests. It's a testament to her strength and dedication to healing, moving on, and creating a brighter future. Christine's evolution, from wife in a polygamous marriage to strong, independent woman, is simply inspiring. She battled for her daughter's future, asserted control over her own happiness, and went through the agonizing but necessary process of rebuilding her life after Cody. Her path is one of fortitude, resilience, and discovery, and it's obvious she's found peace she's earned. What is your take on Christine's experience? How do you feel about Cody's contribution to the dissolution of their marriage and their family dynamics? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe so you don't miss an update. Stay tuned for more of TLC's Sister Wives because we're just getting started with Truly in this messy family drama. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.